How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today I've got a bit of a revised review on the Derry Longhorn 3194. I never call it that, I never remember its name. But yeah, since I last reviewed it, it's just been given a liftable axle. That's like one of the main things. It's also got the diffs permanently on now, which it didn't have before as well. But yeah, as you can see, that kind of middle axle that has no power going to it, I can now lift it up and down, and as I suspected and as I said last time, like, the axle sits so low that when you actually lower it down now, it lifts the whole truck up, so it's not just touching the floor, it's like it was pushing down into the floor and lifting, yeah, a lot of weight off your other axles and all sorts, so it makes a lot of difference. I still think it'd be better overall if they just, or at least you had the option just to entirely remove the wheel, but yeah, driving it around tonight, I definitely... You know, it's kind of 80% there. It's it catches you out way less than it used to. It practically made it unusable before because it was just for an off-road game. It's like as soon as you tried to go over a bump, it would yeah, get in the way basically and lift mainly your rear axles up, like lift all the weight off them. And obviously, like with the dual rears, this has basically got 10 drivable wheels, and it was lifting 8 of them. If not off the floor, at least enough off the floor to where there's no weight on them and they're like just sat, you know, like the suspension's sprung out. But yeah, there's just not enough weight to dig in and grip and carry on. I didn't mean to go this way around that telegraph pole, but the steering on this is a little bit slow. I went flying in there a little bit quick. Yeah, that's what she said. Gotta get it in somewhere. She said that as well. Yeah, going through here though, I mean, in auto now, especially because it has got the diff lock, so it's not just feeding its power away to like the wheel that can find the path of least resistance, which is good as well, because especially with when that dead axle used to lift it up in the air, it was very easy for at least, especially that inside powered axle, to bleed all your power away because it was just lifted up off the floor. Or in fact, even the rear, like the very rear axle, used to bleed a lot of power away as well, because that was usually, if anything, that's going to be sticking up like over the back of the hill. And yeah, I mean, it's not the most rapid thing through here. It's obviously not purpose-built or designed to just be going flat out off-roading, but it is manageable. Again, especially because it's got that diff lock, it still ticks along at a nice speed. Going into high gear, it's not amazing for staying in high gear no matter what. There's definitely, it doesn't motor through, like, and it will stall rather than wheel spin or anything. But yeah, generally speaking, like now, you know, taking along the dirt roads, going through a few patches of mud, I'm able to stay in high, and it's not too bad. And once you do let the speed build up, obviously I'm in high at the minute, so it's not going to go faster than this. I should have put it in auto really there and tried to get a bit more speed, but to be honest, it takes a bit of time to build the speed up, so I don't think I would have gained a lot. But yeah, it knocked all 3 of those trees over, which is one thing I certainly like about it. It has got a lot of, like, feels like nice dense weight to it, and it's sat quite low down as well. Like, it does feel like it's really in the chassis a lot, not the cab. And I think I might have dropped down in auto again then, but I almost made it through that muddy patch there, all the way through in high, which isn't bad really. But I suppose because this thing, as you can see, it's pretty thick. It's got a pretty wide rear end with its dual wheels that are pretty big wheels as well. So it's got a lot of oh, what the bloody hell do they call it? I don't like the pressure pushing into the ground. It's spread its weight amongst like a lot of contact patches. So even though it has got a lot of weight to sit itself in and grip, I can't remember what the name is. I was trying to think like the difference between, say, wheeled vehicles and tanks. Considering how heavy tanks are, they don't actually put a lot of pressure on the floor because the contact patch of a length of tank track versus, like, obviously wheels around, so even though there's a lot of contact potential, it's like you're actually only touching with a few inches of like the very bottom of the wheel. So yeah, like it one thing where I think that showed up recently for me was when I was messing around with Dan doing that the Price of Victory mission, and I kept sinking through like that bedrock and in the muddy, boggy river bit where near where you grab the armoured cars, because it was like a lot of truck just sat out on the front axle, whereas obviously this still does suffer from that a bit at the front. I'll be able to show sort of a bit better detail of how and what that's doing with the ice later on. But yeah, as far as the back goes, it's just very planted, and it does, like, especially muddy situations like this, it does kind of squidge the mud out the way, find itself more grippable terrain, and yeah, it's planted enough to plough its way through there. I just nipped back quickly and drove through there properly, because the first time I swerved off by accident. Another reason why I like it, it does take a bit of a beating as I'm doing this though. As you can see, the engine damage is clocking up, but yeah, I do enjoy smashing these trees down at the farm. Knocked all 8 of them down in a row. I turned around and went this way. It was all going well until once the engine's in the red. It seems random when the game throws in like an engine stalling, but yeah, it got me before the end. But I still was able to knock all the trees down with very little run up for those last few as well. And yeah, obviously here it probably doesn't make the world of difference, but if you're on a bit of an awkward path or whatever and there's a tree in your way, yeah, being able to smash it out of the way instead of reversing with maybe an awkward trailer, or like, you know, your trailer could be tipping and all sorts. You see, like going over the peak of this hill, because I can lift the axle, I still have a lot of grip going over the hill, and that's why I was able to drive up to the point where it's even lifted that trailer. When I just activate the suspension now though, it lifts that middle axle, and it made me, I don't know, well, I ended up tipping backwards, so that's how much of a difference it made. And then now when I'm activating it up and down, you can see the nose of my truck going up and down. But yeah, that's how strong that axle was, as in like resisting. It's almost like it had less suspension than the normal wheels, so when your other wheels had like squidged down as with your own weight, yeah, that dead axle wouldn't, and it was yeah, it just wrecked the feel of the truck for loads of reasons really. I mean, as I'm going through here, I believe I did this Derry relatively early in my reviews, so there was some tests that I just never did in that one because they hadn't occurred yet. But tests like this, going over the barrier, it still catches the front. Considering the size of this truck, it could do with slightly bigger tyres. It particularly shows up at the front. But once I winch forward a little bit, you can see, like, I just clipped the barrier with that dead axle, but it just, like, bounces over it because it's barely touching it. Whereas last time, I remember doing the barrier test with this thing, because that was like solid down on the floor, as soon as you were trying to power that axle over the bump, over the barrier, obviously you'd have to lift all 8 of those rear wheels off the floor to get it over, and then that would like cancel out your power needed to get it over. So it was just, yeah, it was a truck that completely worked against itself in every situation. And here, fair enough, like, I suppose that's a situation where it'd be even better if I could just get rid of the axle completely, but I can live with bits like that because a lot of trucks beach trying to climb over that rock anyway, regardless of if there's a dead axle sat in the middle. Going over, it wouldn't get over this barrier basically. I tried winching it and all sorts. I ended up scraping along the barrier until it got a little bit shorter. But you see, even driving up places like there, that bump where I just went like up the hill and then it flattened out, that's where it'd completely catch you out and lift you off the ground enough to like lose all your momentum and power. This thing, it's got a lot of nice low down torque and everything, but yeah, like you can kind of tell with how it does stall in high every now and then, and like the power, I believe it's on A, so it's not like S plus or anything. It'd be pretty cool if it was S plus, but there's certainly enough there to get by doing various things in the game. There's certainly more of a role this can play now. I mean, before it was so unusable that if I did use it anywhere, I'd end up taking a vehicle in front of it and pretty much tow it everywhere, in which case it was just a expensive, heavy trailer trolley at that point, so I'd just use something else. All things considered, climbing up over that rock, it did alright. It managed to get up there and go off the other end without tipping. As for these pipes though, the bumper, it sits too low at the front still, and it was clipping the pipe, so I wasn't really like bouncing my front off and getting launched over, but in the end I had a couple of goes, got used to like there where to flick it up a bit off that last pipe, so I managed to get the front bumper over the edge of the wall. Gently does it. Just about ripped the whole thing off, but all's good. Again, as you've seen in other videos, that wall is a bit of a troll. Sometimes you can hit it pretty hard and get absolutely no damage. Other times, like I just did there, with about half a foot of run up, it deleted half my truck. Going through these trees though, and considering this thing's pretty massive, that's definitely what she said. Yeah, it sits pretty tall. It catches a lot of branches. But like I said, that low end torque, it's got a lot of muscle to it, and it punched through them trees without a lot of hassle, really. The engine is on the red as well. It didn't do any stalling or anything to me. So the cargo turning test, and yeah, to be honest, the turning circle on this is pretty crap. You can see there, like you can see from the wheels, it's a very shallow steering, really. And when you look how it isn't that, it's like, I suppose if I could tweak anything, you could make the front axles a bit wider, and then it'd be able to give it more like deeper steering as well. It almost looks like the wheels are very tucked in at the front, and then that's also what's like hindering them from yeah, being able to have like a pretty deep steering angle. But overall, I did a 3-point turn. We got out the yard. I managed to make the turn left, so it's nothing too crazy, but don't expect miracles from it. If you go in, yeah, down a tight, windy path or anything like that, I'd probably not the first truck to be volunteering for it. Again though, this is where its own weight does help it quite nicely, and again with that axle out the way, like if that axle was just how it was back in the day, that'd absolutely be, I'd just be trying to drag it through the mud now, and yeah, any contact it has with the ground just worked against all my other tyres, so it was just like not good. I'm surprised they didn't just start with this, to be honest. Like, I don't know, they should have known everyone and just say, yeah, this is shit. But again, when I reviewed it, I really quite liked this truck, but it was that just wrecked it for, I don't know, if I had like a certain area where I was playing around with vehicles and I know what terrain I'm going to be messing around on, I did use this every now and then, flying down the White Valley runway for example. But yeah, going on an unknown mission or a contract or whatever, it's just like I wouldn't take the risk, because if I'm just going to get somewhere and then get stuck by the stupidest of like little bumps of terrain that I just can't get over or whatever, then yeah, it just made it pointless, because then I'm just going to go back, bring another truck like the Dolphin and start towing this thing the whole way anyway. I'm going through the trailer store, the trailer store, I honestly didn't even mean to call it that. Yeah, as I was turning left out of that snow, sorry, I put a winch on the telegraph pole, was able to pull myself around and tighten the steering angle. I wasn't able to get in high driving through that trailer store, which quite a few don't. Motoring through the water there though, no problem really. However here, when I drove through, I did get stuck now, and I mean stuck, like you can see that sort of mid-rear axle like on the right, that's completely locked on the rock, and I was winching to various trees in front of me. I just couldn't pull myself through that gap. I had to winch to the tree behind me. And then, yeah, pull it back. I was now turning right as much as I could, because I knew if I could bump one wheel up one side of the rock that I'd be able to get over, but I just, when I first hit it, I kind of wedged both wheels in between, and yeah, it was not liking it. But again, like that little dip, I just went down and back up. Going down the dip would be fine, because when there's a dip in the middle of the truck, obviously it avoids that middle axle, but then as I'm coming back over like the ridge, that's when yeah, that wheel would just get in the way and ruin it. And again, the steering is yeah, pretty shallow. You definitely got to be on top of it and like turn nice and early just to. But unlike say the Dolphin, you do have to turn early with the Dolphin, but that kind of turns kind of like this. But then right at the end on full lock, you've got a nice kind of whoosh to it where the nose swings quite nicely, especially because it's got two sets of steering axles. This thing, yeah, it's just shallow steering, probably getting on for like the Voron AE, but because this is like a bigger, fatter, more just slower lumbering truck, it doesn't feel as brutal as it does on the Voron AE. I still very much like the Voron AE. I was just seeing if the lifting the axle was changing my horizon there. Not particularly. Maybe on like the brow of a hill it could make a difference. Or yeah, when that fuel trailer was sticking out in the air, it was making a difference then. But yeah, just sat there, it didn't really make a whole lot of difference. Yeah, a bit of interior driving. I think what they've added them, got like a playing card hanging from the roof, bit of a random thing, but why not? So especially with these diff locks on as well, it just feels, when I had to reverse there because of the fairly shallow steering, but yeah, it was just it was hassle free, if you know what I mean. Just quickly stuck it in reverse, soon scooted itself back and I was off again. Not, you know, waiting to bleed the power to each wheel and then jiggle the steering and try and slowly work your way back through the snow. Got the front bumper caught there again. It'd be nice if you could remove the bumper on this, or at least if there was a bit of a higher one. But one thing at a time, they've already, or two things I suppose, they've added diffs and raised that axle out of the way, so it's certainly a good start for this thing. It's better. And if I'm honest, it still doesn't make it onto like my top 10 favourite trucks, but it's not silly far off either. I will be trying to use it more now on the Amandra map. I mean, we'll see, because there's definitely a lot of rocks and bumps on that map, which, yeah, I don't think this thing is the strongest contender, but I never really wanted it to be. It's just I wanted it to feel decent enough. I mean, it looks like a pretty cool truck. I still think the Derry 4520 looks cooler. I thought that thing was going to be an absolute beast. Half the problem with the Derry 4520, it's like, I don't know, just because of what it is and how it looks, and most of us have seen like what that is in real life, the Oshkosh, I can't remember what it's called, 1040 or whatever. Yeah, it's like, you know it's a beast, and then it was like just not what it was supposed to be in this game, so it was a bit of a letdown. This thing was less of an anticlimax because I didn't particularly have amazing hopes for it anyway, but yeah, that axle just ruined any fun you were going to have. Still remember dragging this bloody thing out that White Valley hill. Well, in the end I took the Cat 745C and just dragged it down the river. If anyone's watching this that hasn't rescued this yet, try and drag it up the hill if you want. I'd certainly give it a go first, just for the fun element of it, but yeah, just know that you don't have to get it up that hill. You can just drag it down the river and take it up like a much easier bit of hill down the river, join the road and take it home. And I assume for a lot of people this just became a money lump, really. I get strangely sentimental with a lot of my trucks. I haven't sold anything that I found. I wanted to keep them all this time, so I didn't sell it, but there was plenty of times where it just sat in my garage doing very little, unless I was on White Valley jumping off the cliff. Sorry, yeah, I was rambling a bit there, but going across the rock bridge did pretty well. Going through this mud though, it only got so far. Again, with that axle lifted it helps, but once I still got pretty deep, it's like that axle is still catching, and it's not necessarily the best sort of design and setup to go through there anyway. It's kind of more towards the traditional highway truck layout, if that makes sense, a bit like the Navistar, more than say the Taiga or the Voronggrad. They sort of feel a lot more purpose built to be off-road in the first place. This does feel like a big massive, you know, heavy hauling truck that's been souped up by the army to make it a bit more off-road capable, you know, to tow tanks around and that. I watched a few videos on this though, because obviously with that dead axle in the middle, in theory you're supposed to lower it and it helps spread the weight across the chassis, especially if this thing's got like a big fat trailer and it's towing, like, got tanks on a low loader or something. But I've seen videos on YouTube where even the army, I didn't see one video where the axle was down, whether it was towing tanks or not, but well, I say a lot of the videos, there was 3 or 4 videos I think I've seen with various towing tanks, but even the army had just completely removed that axle. Like, that's how much it was just annoying them. And then I assume the successor to this was the Derry 4520, or in real life the Oshkosh M1040 or whatever it's called. Yeah, they obviously didn't put the dead axle on that. But then ironically, I remember saying this when I was reviewing the Derry 4520, because that has 8 wheels now it's powering, not 6, it bleeds more of its power. Like, I actually think the Derry 4520 could kind of do really with removing like the innermost rear axle and just let it have 2 sets of rear axles like this, one at the front, and then yeah, it'd only have 6 tyres to power, which, as I've said before, for example, if it had 800 horsepower, it's sending 100 horsepower to each wheel. If you just removed one of those axles, so it's only got 6 wheels left, that's now 150 horsepower to each wheel, so you've just made the power to each wheel go up 50% without making the power of the truck go up at all. You've just got rid of one bank of tyres, which is not always a good thing. I like Bruce is awesome that he's got 10 tyres, but he's got enough power to handle those tyres. The 4520 just feels too gutless to be having 8 tyres. Is too much for it to drain its power on, basically. This thing certainly, I'd rather just get rid of that axle than have it as a powered axle or anything. But I'll take what I can get. Raising it out of the way is a pretty good start. I mean, it's not the most mountain goaty of trucks. Pretty impressed with how its resistance to tip there. And to be fair, I don't tip this thing a lot. Like, it is extremely weighted very low down, so yeah, the cab just doesn't really have any influence on it. Especially that the back sits nice and wide as well. It's even if you tip in with the front, you're kind of still within the width of the truck, if that makes sense. You have to go pretty far. Like, if you look now, if you draw a line straight up, it was like my cab wasn't further over than the wheels until I was almost at 90 degrees, really. And yeah, when I rolled, it landed back on its wheels there. I wouldn't, I don't know, I wouldn't hold my breath for it landing back on its wheels or anything, but because it is so weighted, like, far down, it's not going to find its way back to its wheels. But as you can see there, I rolled, I mean, I landed, it was just pretty nice distance down that hill for the size of this truck, and yeah, it all worked out pretty nicely. Need a little boost from that tree to help me get up this hill. But again, low down, torquey kind of, yeah, the low end power. I mean, this thing is a bit of a heavy hauler. I've towed quite a few heavy things with this, but I believe most of them was just, you know, messing around, experimenting. When I did that cargo video of all the different cargo options, I can't remember if this made it in the video, but I remember testing it around, towing a few different things with it. See, there's an example there of where that axle just got in the way. And to be fair to this, it still didn't roll, but that one little bump that I was trying to jump over, yeah, as soon as the dead axle hits it, it's just, it's not got any life to it. It's like taking one of the highway vehicles with no front wheel drive. You know, you drive the front end into some mud and it's just, the back end's kind of poking up out the mud, not really got a lot of weight or grip to it, especially with, like, say, the Transstar's a cab over, so there's a lot of weight at the front. The front axle would be the make the most sense to power because there's the most weight sat over it, whereas you've got, like, the bank of rears powered, but unless you've got a trailer on, there's barely any weight over the back. All things considered, I mean, I'm certainly not going to say it's a mountain goat, I'm not going to recommend it, but to its credit, it is pretty damn hard to roll unless you are taking the piss, and it did manage to get up to here, so yeah, in a squeeze it could possibly get you by in that sort of terrain, but you know, I certainly wouldn't volunteer it for the job again. I left a little bit further, like normally I cut to where I'm cutting through the mud at the quarry, but yeah, basically for road hauling this thing is now pretty damn good, and because that axle is enough out the way that it's never really going to be an issue on a road, even if you're kind of coming over the brow of a pretty steep hill. It's just that axle is, yeah, enough out the way. So I don't think there is any more special trailers, is there, on that Amandra? I know they've added, like, the wide flatbed thing, which is pretty cool, but I was just going to say there's no more, like, special objective trailers. But if you was to do, I'll use the P16 for it, that special objective trailer that you have to take from Drummond Island port to, I can't remember, I think it was back to Smithville Dam. It might have been, like, the place near the garage in, like, the top right hand corner. And yeah, this would probably do that pretty well because it's basically road driving all the way. I used the P16, and I have to say, I don't think this would outshine the P16 in that situation. The P16 was absolutely ragging that special objective trailer behind me, like it just had no choice in the matter. So I just drove through here, no problem whatsoever, just raised that axle, and to be fair, it was like that muddy bit dips down, so that's where it's not going to catch you out. But as I was coming out the other side, it still did have enough grip. I'd already just drove through there, so I believe I'd, like, cut some channels out for my tyres a bit, so they sat a little bit lower. But fortunately, all those problems are gone now, so yeah, 90% of the time, say driving around, it was I didn't have that hassle. Whereas when I first reviewed this, you had to pre-plan every line, you had to look over in the horizon, make sure there's no little dips anywhere, or bumps really. I forgot I even had the loaf attached. But again, this thing, like, as far as heavy hauling goes, it didn't even know that I had a loaf behind it. It just, yeah, ticks along at its own pace. And it didn't tip when I jumped off that mountain bit as well. It was catching the trailer here though. So I just edit light, only about 10 seconds out, I just reversed it up a bit. But you see, because it's definitely in the category of enough weight in itself that it can take advantage of the terrain. A lot of trucks on this game, and again, I'm not knocking it because, you know, it's part of like the balancing of the game. Not every truck's gonna, you don't want every single truck to be really weighty and planted, but yeah, some of the lighter trucks, you could be wheel spinning a lot. I believe this is a combination of, like, I am on a bit of a bump at the minute, and I believe that axle is starting to lift a bit of weight off me. It's still doing it now, but I didn't realise, sorry, I forgot to mention, I did have the axle activated there to where it was fully down at the same level first, but now I've just raised it back up. It certainly helped the situation. You could see the truck change position a bit, but yeah, because that's quite a bit of a dip, that's where the axle is just stopping me at the minute. So yeah, like I said, it's not 100% cured the problem, but it's a step in the right direction. I still think it'd be fairly cool if they offered the chance to just remove it. I'm not sure how many people would just remove it then over having the active suspension option. I know I'd certainly be in the yeah, remove it camp. It'd be kind of cool. Well, I suppose it doesn't really matter actually with this one. Maybe makes more sense with the Warthog. You know, if you could just press some button while you're driving to activate it, rather than having to like actually activate the menu, which then cuts all the power to like your accelerator and that until you get back off the menu. I was pretty happy with how it got up there. I think part of it then was because the weight on the rear kind of makes the nose lift up rather than like having a bend in the trailer. The trailer can't flop downwards behind me too much. I think that kind of helped just jump the gap there really and kept that axle kind of out of the way, but that's exactly the sort of situation, peaking over the top of a hill. I also pretty big rock wedged in there, so I'll give it a pass on that one. So he's having a little moan for a second there, but keep it pinned, fingers crossed, and a few seconds later it yeah, found its grip and we're off again. So that's shallow steering. A lot of trucks have to do a 3-point turn there anyway, because even if they've got sharp enough steering, just with the angle and like lifting that trailer at the quarry, it lifts a lot of the weight off the nose of quite a lot of trucks. So even if they have got quite deep steering, it's the next thing is trying to catch the ground enough to actually pull your nose round before you end up getting blocked by that telegraph pole. But you see, low-end hauling, like, it won't be setting any speed records, but these concrete slabs are certainly, when they're loaded and everything, they're pretty heavy in this game as far as cargo goes. But certainly not having it in auto, put it in low range, but, I mean, the diffs and all-wheel drive are always on with both of them, so I didn't gain anything from that, but obviously the gearing of the low range is a lot more, yeah, towing friendly, shall we say. So maybe the off-road gearbox would be a pretty decent choice. I don't know, again, for me, I enjoy the speed, and this thing, to be fair, if you let it wind up to speed, it's pretty quick, but it's certainly not rapid to the point where it's skidding around all over the place, which I kind of enjoy in its own right. But yeah, it's not a menace with the high range gearbox. So I managed to get up to about there, and it wasn't letting me get any higher. For some reason wasn't reaching the winch first, but I let off the accelerator, floored it again, and managed to throw a winch out to that tree, which got me the rest of the way up really. But But a lot of trucks can almost tap out again there, like, or probably a truck length back, as it's trying to get the back end of the trailer up over the peak of that hill. Yeah, this thing's definitely capable of hauling some pretty decent weight, albeit slowly. Kept trying to stick it in high. It was not liking it. Once I was going down the hill, I was like, yeah, ain't got much choice now. I could have avoided that trailer, but it was in my line of sight. I'd already decided. Yeah, jumped off there pretty nicely. I mean, I slammed down, the cargo became unpacked, but because this thing's so planted and it held onto the trailer pretty well, the trailer didn't really have any choice but to just stay horizontal, so fortunately the cargo didn't go anywhere. Not that I needed it for anything, I removed it just after that, but in a real mission situation, that'd be the difference between just clicking repack cargo and having to send a craned vehicle all the way from the other side. Yeah, basically, although the rears are got, like, you know, with the dual rears, there's like a nice wide contact patch, the front, there's a lot of weight in the front, and the tyres aren't very big, they're not very wide or anything, so if you're going to get on any breakable ice, the front's going to punch through pretty quick. And because the bumpers sits quite low, you're pretty much always going to dig in on the ice. After about 20 attempts across the ice, I believe I made it over twice. One of them was this attempt where I kind of found a narrow bit and just went quick enough that I was hoping to just get the edge of my front bumper over like the other side before it breaks through too far. That ice, I've broke it a few times. When I did the road train, I managed to break that ice, but the first bit generally doesn't. This bit normally does. And to its credit, I was pretty surprised that it was still wading through at the minute. There's definitely, with that axle lifted, you can even see now, like, if that was already propped right down, that'd be, yeah, causing a bit of a situation there. I believe that's how and why I got out of there, just because that axle just left my rear axles alone to be able to plant their grip and power me out of there. And yeah, ticking along here, I mean, it's doing pretty nicely. I'd have no issues travelling at this speed along across this map. It's funny actually that this Lake Cov map, it feels pretty easy now in comparison, but there was a time when it was a slow, painful grind on this map. Certainly with the amount of super snow, I think that got a lot of us by surprise, because there's a lot of places on this map you can try and invent your own route, and then you yeah, encounter the super snow, and it don't give a shit what truck you're in. But yeah, generally speaking, and it's sort of happening to a degree with Amandra. Once I learnt Lake Cov, then I know all the routes to travel. This is why I travel this route so much, because you can get from like the garage to not that far off the Amandra Gateway pretty damn quickly this way without too much hassle. That's where you get the TUZ16 from. And yeah, just again, I mean, it's just free to be able to do what it does as a truck now. Well, hopefully in the next update they show a bit of love to the other Derry. Give it a they should just give it a fat meaty engine. Like, they could easily make that thing pretty damn powerful. It's not going to break the game or anything. We've all, by the time you can afford a Derry, by the time Derry is, yeah, you're entertaining the idea, you've got enough money for any truck in the game. You're probably going to be of a high enough level. Well, I think that Derry you have to be pretty high up to unlock anyway. They should just make it a beast. Like, it has no reason to end up being a bit of a limp dick, because it was just a lot of build up for not a lot. And despite its shallow steering though, went across that cliff. I mean, it wasn't too wide to make the corner. And yeah, even jumping off that ledge there, didn't even consider tipping to the side, which is nice, because this made it look like that wasn't too bad then. But yeah, you fly a lot of trucks off that ledge and they can tip, or at least think about it. You certainly have to panic steer into it or something. And even going along these rocks, I mean, all things considered, I quite like how it's got pretty juicy rear suspension. You see it does wiggle around a lot, and yeah, I do quite like that. Watching it kind of deform the axles to the shape of the terrain you're going over. That's what we like to see. Considering they are dual rears, because they are as flexible as they are, that kind of helps with the just not getting them. If you prop one wheel up on a rock, it's not going to lift the whole set of 4 dual rears up. It's just kind of like, yeah, they squidge and bend around quite a lot, which is pretty nice. Which again was negated before because of that stupid axle. It's actually allowed that squidgy, juicy suspension to, yeah, be enjoyed. Who wouldn't enjoy squidgy suspension? That's the most nailed I've ever nailed a tree. That's the most dead tree ever. It's not even matchsticks anymore. It's just vaporised. Yeah, this thing has a habit of kind of sticking. I mean, I did use this truck as the Top Gear truck darts, or one of them. Now, originally, I wanted to hit the Derry, but then, fortunately, this thing landed on its wheels. I wanted to line it up with the Derry and, yeah, jump this off and give that a whack. Pretty much skimmed off it. Again, stuck in with the front. But it was good. We nailed a warthog. Sounds like a bad night out. I tried to come back, tried to nail the warthog again, but it was having none of it. Still stuck in like a dart. However, because it's stuck in like a dart, sent Bruce in. There's a glitch here. However, I do apologise. I smashed into it like a beauty as well. But the computer just couldn't handle what it's seen. So I came back later when I realised. See, I was making this video, realised it glitched. Quit the video, saved it, went back on the game. Had to just give it one more go. And I jumped the Derry off, hit the dolphin, and then jumped dolphin off, hit the Derry. Of course, Loaf came in for a bit of action. Again, another glitch. It just can't believe what it's seeing. But fortunately, it basically cut just the flying through the air out. I landed on my side, but see, Loaf's professional. He never gives up. What I've got a dolphin on its side. The Derry's on its wheels at the minute. No issue whatsoever. Of course, I was using the Derry as a wedge. However, this is now pure raw Loaf action. See, this was originally when I was like, oh, I'll go and take the Loaf and see if its little van can flip a Derry, thinking it was just going to have no chance whatsoever, and then it did, and I was like, oh, well, that's kind of impressive. And then, yeah, slowly throughout doing these reviews, when I was jumping stuff off the cliff, I realised, get yourself a Loaf. The amount of times that the Loaf just hassle-free flipped monster trucks at the bottom of that cliff instead of me having to recover to garage and then drive it off and then do the same thing, jump off the cliff, and very likely land on my side or roof again, and then just rinse and repeat until I got a good landing. But the Loaf, he yeah, solved all them problems, and then some. I mean, we were going pretty deep by this point, but it was not having it. Finally stalled. But it didn't do too bad. I was attempting to go to the other island, but yeah, we didn't get there. Not this time. Again, if I had a Loaf, I'm sure I would have found a way. I bet I would, actually. If I put a Loaf under the front of it, I probably could have wheeled, like, yeah. We'll have to look into that. Yeah, long story short, though, it's actually, if you got the dough spare, if you've sold it, whatever, or if you've still got it, yeah, get it, give it a little blast. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to see if I can find a reasonable mission. I certainly won't be doing that bloody airplane mission with this thing, I don't think. But yeah, it's now usable, and it's like, it's got a lot of nice little characteristics to the truck now that that axle's out the way and lets you actually experience them. It's also got a pretty cool paint job. Yeah, plenty of fog lights. Pretty decently sized tyres, I suppose. It's got a snorkel. 170 odd grand when it's fully upgraded, so it's certainly not on the cheap end. I don't know why they've muddled up the truck store now. They're all over the place, but yeah, there it is. Is it 130? Oh, sorry, I can't even see it at the minute. Yeah, stock. Again, not the cheapest, but not quite the most expensive. And obviously you find it for free on White Valley, so most of you will have it, but I believe a lot of you probably would have sold it. But yeah, I mean, give it a go if you got the spare money. It might tickle your fancy this time. we're certainly heading in the right direction with revamping and upping some of these trucks. So yeah, we'll see what happens with the other Derry. But anyway, that's about it for today though. I hope that helped. I hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.